Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. My name is Lauren and I post on YouTube twice a week. Every Monday I have my weekly vlog and then Thursday you get a bonus video which ranges from travel content to lifestyle content to my monthly coffee convos. That is what you stumbled upon today. I made a La Colombe iced coffee, just poured it into a cup over ice and then added some vanilla creamer and it is quite good. And now we are hyped and ready to have a chit chat. Before we start, do not forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and come back for more of my videos. If you enjoy lifestyle content and just seeing what a 20-something living in the greater Seattle area is up to, follow along, join the party. It's a good time. But before we even do anything, let's get a cute thumbnail real quick. Today we have an interesting topic that I'm going to be honest, I'm a little nervous to talk about. However, it is a very important topic to discuss. So I figure we're going to put it on the internet, and if it just gives me too much anxiety, we can always private it later. However, I do think it should help someone, hopefully maybe, who may be struggling with something similar to me, and just know that, you know what, it's okay. I'm kind of like your older sister. I have a younger sister myself. I have been well acquainted to the world of older siblingdom for many moons. So we're going to discuss deconstructing religion, leaving faith, and figuring out your own religious identity as an adult, and perhaps leaving what your parents taught you and raised you in. So it's a very interesting, complex topic. Of course, I'm just speaking from my own situation. Your, of course, experience is going to be different from mine. No hate to anyone who is still in the church and practicing. Not my intention here. I just wanted to share my story, and if you're thinking of maybe leaving, just know that it's okay, and there's other people in your corner who have done the same thing. So what did I leave? What's going on? We got to kind of take it back to my childhood, and then we'll discuss the deconstruction of the last few years. And I thought this week would be a good time to talk about it because Sunday was Easter and I went to Mass for the first time in many months, and ideally I would just never go. However, my family does not like that, so I go for like Christmas and Easter if I have to, although I'm really trying to finesse not having to do that. Nonetheless, I grew up Catholic. I am what they would call a cradle Catholic. My mom, her parents, whole family, very, very Catholic, super devout. They grew up in the church, and then my dad converted when he was around my age, like his mid-20s. But he was like Christian beforehand, I think. So they got married, of course, had me, and kind of started this generation of Catholics. And for a while, I was kind of into it. I vibed. I said, ooh, such an opulent, cute vibe. Of course, it was all that I ever knew as a child because, I mean, you're a child. You can't really question it yet, and I didn't have enough frame of reference to think of anything else. You don't know any better. But already there were some flags and some like little, maybe this is not working out well for me as young as like 3, 4, 5 years old. Because I remember being a child and just like squirming around the pews, drawing on things, just always kind of being a bit imaginative and in my own world during the time. And I remember one time going to church with my grandparents, and there was like a younger kid sitting behind me who was like very well behaved and sitting, and my grandma was like, why can't you be well behaved and sit like her? And like, truth be told, I can't focus for nothing even as an adult. Like, to this day, I'm proud of myself if I can go like 30-40 minutes straight without checking my phone and getting distracted with another project. So that's just the way my brain works. And I was like, okay. But as I'm going through like elementary school, I had like little church classes, church group throughout the years, and like it was fine, didn't really mind, had other kids my age, never like was very close to a lot of the other kids my age, but like I knew of them, went to the vacation Bible school, all that stuff. So fast forward to like middle school, that's where things started to change. Also, mind you, I was like baptized as a baby, had my first communion when I was like 7, 8, we were like Roman Catholic, and then confirmation when I was like 17. So I did all the steps I was supposed to do, blah, blah, blah. But come middle school is where things started to get tricky because, mind you, I am what some would call a creative spirit. She's a little eccentric, always love fashion, style, and expressing yourself creatively, right? Like, that's what this whole page is about, is just expressing myself as a creative, as a creator, making my videos. And I'm never going to forget, we had church group every Sunday night for like middle schoolers, and we were sitting in these circles and talking about clothes and stuff because, of course, it's church, and they're like, modest is hottest and purity culture, and you need to wear certain things to be acceptable and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, come again because I love fashion and trends and always experimenting, and I'll always advocate for a personal style, like adding makeup on. Like my girls, if I have daughters one day, will be able to wear makeup when they want to and get to experiment and stuff. So never been an issue from me, but they were talking about how crop tops are just terrible, and I literally was like, why can I not wear my crop tops? Like, I love them, I think they're cute. Literally right now, wearing a crop top, it's super cute, it's just like a little knit, and I'm wearing it with high-waisted jeans. Granted, I'm not like flashing my whole stomach and everything about, but like, you know, it's still a moment, like there's a little skin showing and I don't really mind. Even as a teenager and preteen, like, if people are looking, that's their problem, not mine. And as a child, I should not be dressing to conform to the gaze of like an elder male. Like, they need to be taught better to like not deal with that. So already a little shady, and I was like, what's wrong with my little crop tops? And I already was starting to feel like, oh, my way of expressing myself is like not right, and this is not good, and just already like the thoughts of like it's bad and shame were starting to creep in. And this will be a theme, and it just was so bizarre. And I was like, I'm in middle school, why can't I dress how I want to? So this is when things start to get a little rockier, and I still would go to the classes because like I had some friends in there, and my middle school experience was very strange. I didn't have a ton of friends, so the few that I did kind of latched onto. So fast forward to early aughts of high school, I had the same little evening church group, but it was for high schoolers instead of middle schoolers. And that is where things got even weirder, and I stopped going about a couple months in because I was like, no, Lauren does not agree with this. They were teaching that the earth started like right before like the 7-week thing instead of the actual science of potentially like the Big Bang Theory and everything. And so that was a little weird because I had taken science classes. I was a very well educated person. Like, they promote education and teaching and like critical thinking, so I was starting to use those critical thinking skills, and I was like, huh, that's a little sus. The math ain't mathin'. And I think for a long time, I mean, I couldn't really comprehend all of the teachings and things, and I know that I did take a bit of a passive view at church for a very long time and just kind of like sat through the pews, and I was daydreaming for half of it, and I was just off in Lauren land, like I need to be here, whatever, but I was not really getting anything out of it. And so I'm like sitting listening to this, and they're teaching us very strange, not actual sciencey bits, and I'm like, that is bizarre, and I don't think they were really promoting evolution. And I'm like, if you look at A, B, and C, the maths. So it was getting sus by that point. And then, of course, by the time I was like 15, 16, I was told I had to do confirmation, where you like are confirmed into the church and you get like a little certificate, all this stuff. And I didn't really want to do it, but I was forced to. And I was like, would be smarter to let the child wait, and if they want to do it, then great. And I even was believing this as like a teenager, 16 years old, like, oh, I feel like if I wanted to do it, I should be doing it willingly. Like, that's kind of the vibe and the thought process there. And so it was just getting real shaky for me at that point, and I'm like, why am I being forced to do something? And when you're forced to do something, you're not really going to be as like happy, and it's not going to be as meaningful. And I didn't get to pick my sponsor, and I was not thrilled about that. And then, of course, I had to go to this stupid retreat, and I hate retreats. There was always like missionary work that I could have done, and I thought that was lame too, and I'm very glad I didn't go on any mission trips, because that is such a problematic practice. Because people are basically promoting colonialism in the 21st century. Why would I do that? Why would I take my time and take away resources from poor communities? Whole thing hit and a caboodle. I was like, no, this is not it. And as I've gotten older and started learning more, I'm like, okay, glad we didn't go that route. But still, retreats I think are weird, because you're putting all these kids, and then there's this thing where you like get all these letters sent to you from your family, like, oh, this is such a wonderful thing, and we're like all bawling at 7, 8 p.m. because we're all sleep deprived, we don't eat too much, we're like forced on this weird schedule. It was just very strange, like forced spiritualism, and I wasn't really for it. I never wanted to go on retreats. It's the only one I ever been on, never doing it again. The vibes were not immaculate. The vibes were off, and I was like, this is not the way to have people go into your religion and like want to stay in it. And it was just weird. And then around the same time, I'm already kind of struggling with all of that and starting to question things. And then I was getting like physically yanked out of bed to go to church in the morning because I was like a night owl, and I was like, I just want to like sleep and relax. It's like my weekend. I'm busy through school the whole week doing X, Y, and Z. Why can't I rest? And so that was already starting to put a sour taste in my mouth as well, of like being forced to go, and it was not really willing or voluntary. But after a bit, I was like, whatever, I'll kind of start going again. There was a time where I didn't go, and then in college I kind of got back into it because I did go to a Catholic college, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna find my little Catholic husband, blah blah blah. This is wonderful, great for me. So I did find a Catholic boyfriend going into it. It was a very abusive, not great relationship. So that again started to sour the taste of it all again. And I was dealing with mental health issues, and mental health issues are kind of frowned upon. And so it was just a whole situation, and a lot of things weren't really adding up for me. And yes, you could be like, oh, is that really the church's fault? Not necessarily, but that's how I was feeling. And I need to, of course, stay true to myself and what I feel in my core. And so I like would try to go to mass and listen and do what I was supposed to do, and it was kind of working for a while. Studied abroad in Italy, went to church in Italy. That was kind of fun. But I remember taking an ethics class my junior year, and we were talking about like the ethics of abortion and things like that. And for a long time I was very staunchly like starting to listen to the rules of the church, and I was like, oh, this is how things are supposed to be, blah blah blah. And I was really internalizing things. Well, yes, I was also kind of questioning it at the same time, and leaning and waxing. I was trying to hold on to what I was taught and growing up with, and that kind of also got me into more of a conservative ideology for a while, which was like not really the vibes, and caused a lot of turmoil between me and some friends I had at the time in high school. So that was interesting to say the least. But then I never really like critically thought about, oh, what are the things that I'm being taught? Like, what are my beliefs? Because I was kind of going on what other people were telling me too, which was like fine as a kid, but like once you're getting older and you're starting to think and you're going to school and really trying to get an education, you're going to start using that education and thinking. And I was like, wait, the further down you go in the ethics of it all, it doesn't make sense. Like, there's such a disconnect between what the church is teaching and then what is fact. And that's where the like kind of light bulb started like sparking a little bit. You know how like a dim light bulb kind of like flashes a little bit? That's kind of where we were at. And then, of course, there's a lot of scandal within the Catholic Church, and a lot of priests do very unsavory things. And there were some from my college that were getting sent to this one church that they put all of the predators, basically, and they all just kind of go there, and they're not like cut out of the church, like they're still priests. It's all very sus, and I was like, that's really weird. And we were kind of all talking about it amongst me and my peers while we were abroad, and we're like, what the heck? And so that again, the fizzles are starting to get a little brighter, like, can I really back it up? And there was starting to be a lot of like personal conflict of like, okay, this is what I believe, but like I really disagree with a lot of stuff that's going on. And I'm like, how much cognitive dissonance is one person supposed to do? And be like, oh yeah, it's like God's church, but like the people are the ones that made the church. So when people's actions are really suspicious and it's becoming like a big theme and routine, how am I supposed to deal with that? Like, I was starting to get to a point where I was like, I don't think I can in good conscience say that I belong to a community and like this faith practice when I know all of these other things going on. So I was starting to struggle with it a bit, but I would still go to mass because it kind of became like a routine for me, and it was part of what I did every week. And I was like, blah blah blah, whatever. And I was kind of afraid to leave too, because like my family's in it, like they all still go even to this day. And I was like, oh, I don't want to like leave my family and then just kind of like isolate myself. But then a saving grace of things happened called COVID. And so one good thing that came out of it was that I was really starting to think back through my values, and we didn't actually have to go to church. So I was able to stay home and rest. And I'm never going to forget walking downstairs one day, seeing my parents kneeling in front of our TV, like watching church. And I was like, what the heck? And the light bulb, you know, we were having the sparks, ignited. It was just like, whoosh. And I was like, what the heck? Because we were taught like all other faiths are wrong and like Catholic is the one true church. But then I'm like, it kind of looks like a cult too. And that's when my brain really started going, and I was like, oh my gosh, how do we say that we're better than everyone else? Which I'd always kind of struggled with. And then all these people think they're good and like all of this stuff's going on, but then we're doing a lot of the same practices, and like kneeling in front of a television, I just felt was so bizarre. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is too much. And so that's when I started doing a lot of my deconstructive work and really thinking, okay, Lauren, what are your values? What are your ethics? Also, I forgot to mention, when we were in high school and I was getting ready to be confirmed and everything, we were talking about like different beliefs, and we were talking about how, same-sex marriage and stuff is wrong because they can't naturally produce a child. But then I literally said, well, what about the people who are in like a straight marriage that can't have kids? Is their marriage wrong and bad? And they didn't really have an answer for me. And I was like, make it make sense. So I'm starting to think back on all of these experiences I was having, and I was like, there's so many like question marks, flags, like, come again. And it just got to a point where I was like, I cannot in good faith say that I am Catholic anymore. Granted, am I going to say that I'm not Christian? No, I still believe in God. I still believe that there are so many things that have happened in my life that he's put his hand in and hand on, and I'm like, okay, homie and I are good. And I was like, why don't I just really focus on my relationship with God, which is truly what the church teaches us in general, like to have a relationship with him and to just teach his ways through X, Y, and Z, and talking to different people and sharing your life experiences. But there's also that aspect of listening and gaining perspective from other points of view that you don't typically have. And so that kind of goes back to my old friendship post, where just talk to other people, find out what they have going on, their ideologies, their different backgrounds. And once I started talking to people with LGBTQ plus communities and those who have like fully left the church, most of my friends that were Catholic with me in high school, we've all left the church now. And then of course with all of the residential schools and just kind of learning more about like colonialism, imperialism, and how the church was basically stripping so many different people of their culture and their identity and background to say, oh, this is like the one right way to do it. Who are we to say? Now granted, I'm gonna say, yes, I am a Christian, I am a Christian woman, and I do believe in caring about other people and listening and kind of acting as Jesus did in a Christ-like way, in that, you know, you do go out and you help those who are in vulnerable positions and use your levels of power to kind of help alleviate things. But the alleviation is not really going on in today's society, is it? There's so much wealth inequality, there's such a huge homeless population, and just like so many things going wrong, and a lot of violence and different things. And I was like, who am I to act that I'm better than everyone else? And I feel like a lot of people just aren't really out there like actually helping others, and it's just a whole convoluted mess. And I was like, why am I putting money into a church that isn't really out there helping other people? To an extent, but then they're also doing things like building these grandiose buildings and blah blah blah. And it's like, is that what God meant when he said to build this church? And then of course I started learning more about like the Bible itself, and I had read the Bible cover to cover all throughout high school. And once I like really started thinking about things and learning the more cultural context of when the Bible was written and what was going on in the world at the time, I was like, oh, we're seeing it through a totally wrong lens. So as all those different things started to bubble up, then I was like, okay, I just cannot say that I'm Catholic anymore, and no bueno. And it's been difficult leaving and like talking to my family about it. And so that's going to be like our next little phase. How do you then kind of go about life when you know so many people are in it? And I'm kind of thinking of it nowadays as the allegory of the cave. So Plato talked about how we all are kind of like looking into these shadows and we think, oh, this is reality, but it's really not. It's just like what our little perspective is. And there are like these shadows going across the wall. We think, oh, those are real, this is real life. But then one day someone goes out of the shadows, sees the real light, and they're like, oh, we've been tricked. That's kind of how I feel. So I've kind of gone out, seen the light of like, oh, Christianity and like our beliefs and what I was taught as a child and all of the evangelism, that kind of is a lie. And like, they are trying to promote their religion, their ideology. They want us to have a lot of kids to keep the church going, but is it really doing a lot to do actual good in the world? Yeah, I don't really agree. And so I've gone out and I'm like trying to help now everyone in the shadows, like, this is the light. Like, there's so much good out there. You don't have to be tied down to a certain faith and religious ideology in order to have a relationship with God and be a good person. But shadow people are not really in agreement. So some of my family members are a little bit helpful, most of them are not. A lot of them are like, oh, people leave the church and come back, and I'm like, well, what about the people who leave forever? I just really cannot go back after everything that I've learned, I've taught, I've, you know, exposed myself to. And it's not like I'm jumping between different faiths. Like, you can do whatever you want to do, but it just doesn't feel like the one true church or religion to me anymore. Like I was sold on this idea. So then I went to church, of course, a couple days ago for Easter, and I was actually sitting and being more of an active listener instead of passively being there. And I could just hear in like the homilies and sermons and all the bits and bobs just like how much they want us to like repeat these different things. And I feel like there's coming to a point where it's like, how far can we have these people go and kind of like brainwash them into buying into our philosophy and ideology? And then when you like look at the history of it all, of having it start in like the Middle East and then move to Europe, and you have the big emperors converting, and then it just sort of spreads and goes from there, and just like how much control they've had, it's insane. And that's why I also just love history as like a little aside. Like once you start educating yourself and teaching yourself of how the world has worked over generations and centuries and millennia, it's hard to kind of like go back and say, oh, here's all these things now that I know, let's just keep repeating them. Because as I've learned from one of my favorite quotes of all time, those who do not learn about the past are condemned to repeat it. And I feel like that is so prevalent here when you're starting to give yourself a critical eye on religion and faith, and starting to figure out, okay, what are my personal values? How can I show up in the world as the best version of myself I can be? What are my various life experiences? What have I learned from other people, hearing their stories, their experiences, and kind of melding it into the person I am today? And I do value people. I want everyone to be not necessarily equal, but have equity, you know, and help raise up those who, you know, don't have a whole lot. And what can I do to help marginalized communities, you know, become less ostracized and othered in this world? So that's kind of where I'm at today. It is a little lonely sometimes, but you do need to find people that have also kind of gone through this deconstruction themselves and talk to them, see their perspective, and then kind of come to some sort of a common ground as a group and pairing, and just know that there are a lot of other people out there who are going through the same thing, and you are not alone. That's kind of like my biggest takeaway of it all, and that it is a little lonely trying to navigate what you think is right versus what you've been told forever. And you don't necessarily want to go against your parents, like that's what you're taught. You're like, oh, don't disobey your parents, but you also need to become your own person at some point, especially once you are getting into adulthood and figuring out who you are as a person, what you want to do. And like in the last year, as I've really started to discover who I am, what I care about, my own values, I feel like I'm finally starting to feel happy and like a lot more of my bubbly old self that has kind of been buried, and I don't even know if she's fully been out into this world. And I went and saw a friend yesterday, and she was like, Lauren, you just seem so much lighter and happier. And I was like, honestly, it's because I am. I'm starting to live in my authentic truth, starting to choose things that make me happy, and figuring out who I am as a young adult creative and business owner and entrepreneur. So all of this to say, it's okay to leave what you know. It's okay to think critically and to be educated. That's why education is so important. Of course, when you're in it, you're going to school, it is a bit stressful, and there are different ways to learn about things. I'm still always teaching myself through YouTube videos and watching different TED Talks and various topics. I don't read a whole lot, but I definitely do try to educate myself and have those really meaningful, deeper conversations that I maybe wouldn't have back in the day. So this is my encouragement to you to just educate yourself, talk, figure out what means the most to you, and get on with your life. All right, my camera was petering out on me, but what I want you to take away from this video, if you take away anything, is it's okay to challenge yourself and to learn and to grow, and it's okay to change from who you were as a child, who you were as a young adult, and become a different version of yourself. I mean, my dad changed in his mid-20s. I was having a really cool conversation with my grandma a couple weeks back on how she moved literally from Europe in her early mid-20s and came to America, and then didn't think she was going to live here, but then has been here for 60 plus years. So having those conversations with people, having those meaningful chats, and just kind of learning and exposing yourself to the world, getting that education, and always kind of challenging yourself too. Like, it's okay to question what you've been taught forever. Like, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist per se, but there is a little bit of validity in questioning things and admitting like, oh, the way I used to think and the person I used to be is now a little bit different than the person I am today. Like, maybe my identity or whatever it may be is shifting and evolving, and we always are constantly getting new information. We're in a far more connected world than we've ever been, so it's a lot easier to pass information between people, and you know, you may change. You may find an even better, happier version of yourself, and that's okay. And if it's different than what you think you're supposed to do and what you've been taught to do, that is also okay. I think there's such a pressure right now to always go like for the grain and do what you're supposed to do. You like go to school, go to college, get your degree, get a nice fancy job, move out, do X, Y, and Z, but there's a lot more nuance than that. You know, you can go, you can try new things, you can fail, you can say, hey, I thought something, but I've changed my mind, and that's perfectly okay. That's totally valid because you're still evolving and growing, and you're always going to do that through the rest of your days. So if you stayed through this long, thank you guys so much for watching. This was quite an interesting video and definitely a deviation from what I typically post about, but I do think there's a lot of value in talking about those more difficult topics and being a bit more vulnerable and saying, hey, I've kind of messed up, I've changed, this is how I did it, and kind of get into the history of someone's deconstruction and reconstructing who they are and how they identify. I think faith is such a personal, like deeply personal topic and conversation that it's okay to like question and change your mind and grow. And you know, as long as you're treating people with respect and kindness and love, I think that's truly all that matters at the end of the day. So don't forget again to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and come back for more of my little videos. I do, again, these coffee convos once a month, and next month I have a really special guest, so be sure to come back and stay tuned for that. And with that, I'm going to head off. Toodles!